break into song. You all know this song, right?
Feelings.
Feelings, nothing more than feelings.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
There you go. Okay. My name is Lois Ann Abraham, and I am a writer. And Margie told you my books, which will be on sale in the back. And I am perfectly happy to sign anything you want signed, any way you want it signed. You know, to my dearest friend ever. Fine, you know, good, that's good. I taught at American River College. As she said, I learned a lot by teaching, which I thought was the whole point of it. And I have books that I can talk about more later, but first, I want to introduce the subject of feelings, because we need to inhabit our characters with feelings, right? And something beyond sad, glad, or mad, right? We're going to move beyond that. I thought, here's how I'm going to introduce this. I thought to myself, I thought I'll look it up in the dictionary. And there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or maybe different definitions, and I'll use that, and that'll be the outline, and da-da-da. And so I looked it up using Google, which is my best friend, and here's what I got. According to the APA Dictionary of Psychology, and certainly they should know, a feeling is a self-contained phenomenal experience. Is that helping? Is that helping at all? And feelings are, quote, subjective, evaluative, and independent of the sensations, thoughts, or images evoking them. So I closed that down and said, okay, I'm just telling you the dead ends, right? But it does suggest that we can agree that feelings exist in an individual, a person, a character, dare I say, who's having experiences and feelings. So we want to create characters as in our fiction writing and even in our nonfiction personal writing that whose feelings are inspiring, interesting to the readers who also have feelings. Okay, that's the great thing about being a human being, is we are so complicated. We need them to be recognizable. Okay, if I do this, you know what it means. It means if I. Okay, so all of these gestures contain feelings. They need to be understandable. For example, if I, which I wouldn't, but if I did write a sentence that said, I felt as though my toes had been braided. Relatable? Oh, I don't know, you have to go pretty far out there to get your toes braided. Yeah, so that doesn't work. And I also, one of the worst books I ever read, it was that. There was a sex scene in it, okay, in a hotel in New Guinea. And the author wanted to be really explicit and spicy, okay, but also a little coy. And it ended up, I'm not kidding, it ended up having in it a macaque with a little hat. Okay, that stood in for something, but it's like, then the macaque with the little hat. It's like, really? Well, I had no idea, you know, what I was missing.
What's a macaque?
A macaque is a little monkey. Yeah.
Oh, monkey.
Yeah, like a little monkey in a hat was a metaphor, I think. And at some point, the poor woman who's dancing with the macaque or something is reminded of her mother's laundry flapping on the clothesline in the wind. And it's like, I haven't had that either, you know? It's like, I felt like, is it me? But anyway, it was not recognizable. It was not something I could relate to. I could only wonder what it meant. So it has to be relatable, okay? It has to be consequential. That is, if I have a character and they have a twinge in their left elbow, so there's a reason, unless it matters, it's not consequential, there's no consequence. If I give my character a pain in their gut, they either have an ulcer, they had Mexican food last night and should not have, or something like that is going on. There's some anxiety, there's something that has a consequence to your story. So in order to convey those feelings to readers, the writer, we as writers, and it is so cool to talk to writers, we as writers have to inhabit those characters. We have to go with them. We have to feel their in our imagination. We have to feel them. And sometimes this is hard. Clearly it was hard for the author of the macaque story. But in Deborah's Gift, which is my latest novel, and I'm pointing to two things, that's probably it, right? Okay. It's not that one. That one hasn't been written yet. My protagonist, Deborah, in Deborah's Gift, she has to do something that's very hard. She has to face the devastation of her home. Okay, I won't tell you any more than that because that would be a spoiler, but my impulse as a non-courageous person was like, okay, well, she's just gonna get on a boat, she's gonna go home, and she's gonna hole up in her great aunt's empty house and avoid this whole thing. And my sister, who is an artist, which is lovely to have one of, said, no, she's a visual processor. She wants to see it. And I go, but really? Okay. I always listen to advice. I don't always take it, but I always listen. And so I had to process it, and I'm not a visual person. I had to process it myself. What do I see? And I had pictures, it was easy, but for that part, but it was grueling to go through it with her. She carried me through it because she had more courage than I did. So, and I often call this process of doing things you don't want to do because you want your character to do them, holding my feet to the fire. And we do that with our readers sometimes. Reading can be excruciating when something really bad happens. But they go through it, they trust you, because you know what it is. You've been there before them, and you're leading the way. So after I wrote that scene, or chapter, the whole chapter, after I did that, I went and wrote something very silly and cheerful. Just to kind of recover myself, because it was grueling. And the point is, I think, that as writers, a lot of times we're focused on plot. And so we have these little characters. We've got, okay, spy, super spy. We move them around. Okay, like little girls playing with Barbie dolls or paper dolls. And they just walk over here, and then they get in a fight. And then they walk over here, and then they start kissing each other. If you play Barbie dolls the way I did, they start kissing each other, and then they walk around like that. So by feeling for them, feeling with them, feeling what they have to feel, we make them come alive. Okay. So that's what we want to do, right? We want to bring them to life for our readers. Okay. 35 years ago, I am advised to do that. Thank you. 35 years ago, I was teaching in Grass Valley at the newly opened Sierra College campus. And I had assigned an essay, first class. It was my first class ever. And I got an incredible set of essays. I've never gotten a set of papers like that since in the following 35 years. It was, it kind of set me up to expect really great things. But there was one essay where a woman was writing about her experience of her husband had been sent to Desert Storm 1, and it was just called Desert Storm at the time, of course. But she knew when he was deployed, they would just come get him and he'd go. There was no time to say goodbye yet. And she knew that once he was gone, which he was, that if he died, okay, if he were to die in that conflict, she would know. She would be told by the base commander and the chaplain. They would both come to her house in their cars and come to her house and tell her. And she knew that, and she said, in this essay, she said, every time she left to go do errands, do the things you do, as she was driving home, she was very much aware that there could be those two cars. Mm-hmm. And it meant that she was straining forward to see around the next block, which obviously you can't do, but the feeling of like, it communicated so much to me, and because she situated it in her body, she didn't just say, I was anxious. She might have done, but she described this sensation of trying to be where you're not, of trying to get there first. So that was like, I went, well, that is spectacular. That was really interesting. I had another essay, it was a terrible essay, but I remember it 35 years later. Okay, so that's part of the point of this is, yeah, it was about an essay about swimming, okay? And I personally am not a swimmer. I just am always aware that if you breathe the water, it will kill you, you know? It's just a precaution. So I'm a little about swimming. I've thought I would like to swim, but I don't want to risk my life swimming. But she wrote about it, and she wrote about the water feeling silky on her skin as she slid through the water. It felt silky. And I remember that 35 years later. Was it so nice? So nice. I might even take a swimming lesson someday. I might. Another example I'm going to give you is from my own work. And this is a sentence that sticks with me. I wrote it, okay. But it sticks with me is I wrote a story, and this is in Circus Girl, one of the stories in Circus Girl called Rhoda Welkin. And I wrote about a very grumpy woman. This is modeled after a cousin of mine that I never really knew very well, but she was just incredibly grim and grumpy for a young person. So I wrote it about her, and the character I named Rhoda. And the sentence that I'm in love with, and I don't know if you will love it or not, you may feel free to love it or not, is every night Rhoda dreamed about flying, but she never remembered her dreams. I like that so much, and I'll tell you why. I tend to like things I've written. You know, otherwise I wouldn't write them. But this was like, you know something about her that she doesn't know about herself. You know something about her inner life that she is not privy to yet. So there's a possibility that there's things in her that she's blocking, that she hasn't accessed. And so that's what will happen with that. Okay. So I am going to invite you to do some writing. And I see you all have your pencils and paper, so that's very cool. In teaching school, you can't always count on that. To experiment and to play with the notion of feelings. Okay, and I'm going to be a little bit bossy, and I'm also going to be not bossy. Okay, I'll start bossy, loosen up as we go. Okay, but I also wanted to tell you this story, which may sound like it's going to be grim, but it's not. But as my dear mother, as she was nearing the end of her life, real close, she said to her assembled children who were hovering, she said, "Have fun, it's important." And it was like, oh, okay, well, we can do that. That's important, and we can do it. And I know that this group, because I visited your group before, likes to have fun. It's a very fun-loving group. So let's have fun with this. It's going to be, I'm going to put up a list, a couple of lists. I'm going to put all kinds of stuff up. But I'm going to put up a list of physical feelings, sensations, if you will, in the body. We'll see how this works. We'll see if it even fits. Okay. Sensations. Those are feelings, are they not? Okay. Sensations in muscles. Oh, there's just a whole world of sensations we have in our muscles. They're tight, they're loose, they're sore, they're cramping, they twitch. You ever have a muscle twitch? Okay. The gut has much to tell us, right? It gurgles, it cramps, it does things. Wherever you want to go with that, okay? The head and neck, and I should actually put the face in there too. And I should tell you that these are just lists. I didn't really analytically, I cannot defend why things are in these lists. Okay, I just wanted them up there. Okay, so we don't have to worry about the name of the category. But head and neck, neck, tight, neck, crick. The face does things sometimes when we don't want it to. Right? Fine, thank you. We lie with our faces. Right, so we have sensation in our faces when we're lying. It's different than when we really mean it. Okay, so that's just an example. You can go wherever your imagination takes you. Fingertips, this is a kind of touching that is like silky. Well, that was obviously not just fingertips, but things that we feel this way. How does that feel? Okay. And then there's being touched. How does that feel? And there we get heat and texture and hardness and softness and ookiness and gooiness and I don't know. It's a whole world we've got to work with here. That's skin. Smell and hearing, you'll do that. Okay, chances are very good that you will do that. Did you have a question?
Yeah, would taste be in sensation?
You could if they have, sure, that's mouth, head, face.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, and hearing, I put that up there, but we don't want to get too hung up on sense. You know, sight, hearing, blah, blah, blah. The macaque story, I'm sure you all remember the bold little macaque with his hat. The writer was very careful to keep saying that the curtains in the room were green. They had little pink flowers on them. It was totally inconsequential detail, and it was just, I thought I knew, that it was a question of, oh, be sure and use all the senses that you're seeing. It's like, oh, and by the way, it smelled like fish, you know. Okay. And then we have thoughts as feelings. I just have a feeling that something is about to happen. I just have a feeling about somebody. Could be in my gut, could be in my head. I just have a feeling about that person or that situation. So sometimes characters have realizations. He realized that the door had locked behind him. Oh my God. Yes, it was true. But you can also have characters realize things that are not true. Okay, they've realized it, but as a reader and the writer, you know it's a false realization. She realized every man in the room was in love with her. Okay? False realization, false. And so, but that tells you something. She's realizing it, but it's not real. Okay. A long overdue realization. Oh my God, I left the baby on the bus. Okay. Yeah, or oh my God, he was asking me to marry him and I didn't realize it at the time. I thought he was offering me a job, which I didn't want. You know, so realizations that can be long overdue. Self-criticism, oh my God. We have books and websites and podcasts and everything else about self-esteem, about self-criticism, about the little voice, you know, the little voice that goes, well, I don't know, it's not quite as good as that, you know, the comparing voice and the self-critical voice. So the characters have those. Even the most confident of characters may have a little twinge of that, and it makes them relatable. Judging. Well, yeah. I mean, who's doing what and who should they be and all the rest of it. That can go through the mind of a character even if they're not going to act on it. But it tells you something about their values, something about their attitude towards other people and how they see themselves fitting into a situation. Judging. We're not going to do all of these. By the way, I'm not going to ask you to write a novel which includes all of these. That would be not right. Wondering. Students these days think wondering and wandering is the same word. And I have tried mightily, I must say, I have tried to say, no, wondering is like, oh, it opens up. You're thinking about, you don't know. Wandering is, but if your mind is wandering, you're probably not wondering, because wondering is more, wandering is more focused, right? Wondering, I don't know which is more focused. I couldn't explain it to them, and I can't explain it to you, but I'm just saying. Okay, I'll quit saying. Coming to a decision, that's an inner, and it's a different feeling than not knowing yet, right? Oh, that's what I'm going to do. Visions and hallucinations. Well, you don't want to go too far with that or it gets really boring. I speak as a child of the 60s. You just don't want to go too far with that. But sometimes somebody will have an inner vision of, and it's related to realization, it's related to whatever it's related to, but it's like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. They have a vision of themselves in a space. Or they have a, you see what I mean? Okay. And then worrying and anxiety, which we do, and which takes place in our bodies. So it's not just a head thing, but it has an effect on the entire body. Right? Now this is where I use my poor little poster that got sort of beat up. There. And And I made a list of inner life feelings, memories that come with their own sensations, that come with their own feelings, physical feelings, that come with their own messages. So a story can take off when the main character or a character remembers something from childhood. Okay, remembers something parallel from childhood. Okay, I can think of one story where I did that. A significant life event, get divorced, remembers the wedding. Okay, that may be the most obvious. Remembers a death, remembers a memory of a place, very like the place where the character is, or very different, or alike in some way, but different in others. Impulse. I love impulse because impulses are not movement, okay, they're not actions, but they stand in for actions. And if I had an impulse to smack somebody in the face and I didn't do it, then I wouldn't do it. But I could have the impulse and it would tell you something about my inner life if I were a character. Okay? This impulse, and sometimes people follow their impulses. On an impulse, she followed the child out into the courtyard. Okay, what impulse? What is that? Why would she do that? A delusion. This probably relates back to, she thought every man in the room was in love with her. Yeah, a delusion. People have delusions. Sometimes they have big delusions. Sometimes they just have a little bitty bit of delusion. But it's interesting to readers. They know people who have delusions. They know what it feels like, perhaps, to come out of a delusion. I mean, if you've ever been a child, you've believed things that turned out not to be true. Right? If you had an older sister who fed you, just a little personal, but who fed you lies all the time, then it's going to be some coming out of those delusions about what's going on. Finding out, and I hope this isn't a spoiler, but finding out that Santa Claus is not real, right, can be the death of delusion. So daydreaming, we all do it. If we're writers, it's the best thing we can possibly do, right? That's an overstatement, isn't it? It's a really good thing to do. Let me put it that way. It's a really good thing to do because we're rehearsing our novel. We're rehearsing our story. We are going through it again and again. We're sharpening some of the dialogue maybe, or we're finding new details in the setting as we go through it again and again. And I used to, when I'm writing, my husband, my late husband, would walk through and I'd be sitting in the living room going, and he would say, "Oh, you're writing." And it was absolutely true. That's what I was doing. I was writing. I was like, "Oh." So I say, don't discount the value of daydreaming as writers, but also let your characters daydream a little once in a while. Okay. Now, the wild rumpus begins. I want each one of you, now I'm thinking we might want to work in pairs or singles, it doesn't matter. We're going to read everything, so it might be good to have some pairs if you're sitting next to somebody you like to work with, for example. If I did that in a classroom, nobody would pair up. But anyway, I want you to choose two numbers between 1 and 20, and just write them down. Two numbers between 1 and 20. 20, 1 and 20. Could be 1, could be 20. And when you have those, look at me. Okay, can't quite hear?
When you have
Those numbers written down, give me a look that says, I'm good. Okay, yeah, you guys are good. Okay, who has number 1? You have number 1. One of your characters is a retired circus acrobat. So write that down. Who has number 2? Okay, you've got a librarian. 3. No 3s. 4. Somebody in the middle of a messy divorce. Ooh, I know. Number 5. A parent of 10 children. Number 6. A lost tourist. Number 7. Ooh, a lot of people like 7. Dog groomer. Number 8. Freelance photographer. 9. Psychology graduate student.
9,
9.
psychology,
Graduate student. Number 10. An organic farmer. Number 11. First grade teacher. Number 12. 100-year-old jockey. 13. A musician. 14. Someone who's recently declared cancer-free. 15. Someone whose adopted child is looking for their birth parents. 16. A recent immigrant. 17. 18.
No, 17.
Oh, 17. Oh, I'm sorry. It's the post, you know.
Yeah.
It's the post that comes between us. It's like, okay. Yeah, so you want number 17 or 18? 17. An avid outdoor person. 18. A poet. Number 19. A pregnant person. 20. A cat person. Okay, so you've got 2 characters. Does anybody need their character repeated to them? Okay, you've got 2 characters, so this is where it all begins. I say. Okay. I want you, this is a little pre-writing that we're gonna do.
Is it on the handout?
It's not on the handout. It is on the handout. Okay. I just have lots of papers here. Pre-writing, okay. I want you to adopt these people. Take a couple of minutes to really adopt these people. Name them, think about their lives, make a few notes maybe about who they are and what they want out of life. It may be that being a dog groomer is not the most important part of this person's experience right now. Okay, I don't insist that it be about dog grooming.
Are you expecting us to write what you just shared with us?
No, no, I just want you to take notes right now about your characters.
Okay.
To think your characters through. We've got character A and character B, one is a dog groomer, one is a poet, and they're gonna have a scene together. Oh, Fluffy, I don't know how that works out, but you'll figure it out. Next, after you've done that, if you're ready, are you ready?
So in the first part, are we just describing?
You're just getting clear in your mind, so these are just notes for you about these people.
Are they 2 different people or are they 2 things?
The 2 different people are gonna be in a scene together. Okay, 2 different people, they're gonna be in a scene together that you're gonna write. Okay, you're going to decide on a place, which may imply a reason that these people are together. Maybe it's an airport bar and they're strangers. Maybe it's a living room and they're relatives. Maybe, I don't know. And you don't know yet, but I want you to figure out how these two people can be in the same place. And make a note of it. If you can just remember it, then just remember it. And think about where their situations are going to intersect. And this is just to get a story going. Okay, that's all I'm trying to do is get a story going for you. If I use the ones that nobody chose and I say a disgruntled, unhappy teenager, talking to a librarian. Okay, well I can picture how that could come together. Okay, maybe in the library, maybe on the steps of the library, maybe in jail. I don't know which one would be in, but.
Dumpster behind the library.
Or behind the library, they're meeting behind the library. Okay, pretty exciting stuff you got going there, okay. Okay, now. Okay. Now I think you've done the background, you're ready to go. Okay, we're going to write a scene. And here's how I envision this. Now you can cheat as much as you want to. You understand what I'm saying? This is where I get a lot less bossy. But I was bossy about the characters. I'm not bossy anymore. Start with character A, and I don't care which one is character A, whatever you want. And give them, write a sentence, get them started somewhere, and give them a sensation.
Say that again.
Say it again.
Okay. You've got them situated someplace, and it could be either character that you were assigned. Give them a physical sensation. Write a sentence in which they feel something in this, possibly from this list. Okay, they hear something, they smell something, they have a feeling in their face, they have a muscle tone, muscle tension, muscle relaxation. Just choose one telling detail. And when I say telling, I mean it tells the reader something. How their emotional state is, what their situation is, what's going to happen next. So what we're going to get here is we're going to understand your character better. We're going to know how they relate, possibly how they relate to character number 2. You might get something of their backstory, maybe even what's likely to happen. So this is a way of building those kinds of details without getting prosy about it. You know what I mean? She was a librarian. She liked books, right? I mean, I don't know. Okay. Okay, now give that same character one of these other kinds of feelings. One of these or one of these. The same character that's had the physical sensation is now going to have something related to their inner life or their thinking. But this character of yours is not alone. There's another character in the scene, so you may have already mentioned that character or not. But we're now going to bring that character into play, and we're going to use a sentence including a feeling. And I would encourage you, if you did an inner life one, give this character a thought, or one of from the thought list. Does that make sense? Can you hear me okay? And if you're ready, and you don't have to be ready, but if you are ready, I invite you to write one last sentence that either wraps it up or opens it up. Okay? It's either going to lead to more action, one last sentence, that's either going to make your reader expect a lot more, or is going to underline it, what's going on, and essentially put a stop to it. A sentence that ends the story, or a sentence that opens it up.
So are we doing all 7 right now? All 7 steps?
Sure. You've got all your sentences written. Yeah, that's all we're doing. But I am going to invite you, when enough people are ready, I'm going to invite you to share what you wrote and give us a quick notion, there's a lot of people, give us a quick notion of what it felt like to you to do this. If it was like, well, yeah, you can say that, you just won't say it, and we'll move on, find somebody with a realization. Because I'd like to hear that, or if you have any questions about it. So how many people have their last sentence written? Okay. This is the quick side. This is the leisurely side. That's fine.
What's the question?
How many people are ready to read or to hear other people read? Yeah. Okay, let's take another couple of minutes for that last meaningful sentence. Let me ask you this then. How many of you ended your story decisively? Okay, not very many. You've written flash fiction.
Yeah.
If you did, that's flash fiction. Right? You've got a little bit, and it's a whole story, there's an ending to it. Sure enough, so that's fun. Would you like to read it to us? Okay, and try to read loud. You, absolutely.
Okay. I have a dog groomer and someone who was recently declared cancer-free.
Okay.
Pat owns Sparky's dog grooming shop. The best dog grooming shop in Beverly Hills. Giselle came in with Fluffy. She was a beautiful movie star, famous, but easygoing and relaxed. And usually she came once a month, but it had only been a few days. Giselle had a great big smile on her face, and she was petting Fluffy happily. Pat, I'm cured. The chemo worked. Oh, that is great news. He felt attracted to her, and he had imagined getting close to her since his wife had died. And to Fluffy, Pat reached out and put his hand on Giselle's shoulder. That's so wonderful. I'm so happy for you. Pat had prepared himself for Giselle to die. She had told him her days were numbered, but now he realized she'd be around for a while. He wondered if she would go out with him, just a simple dog groomer, and her a big movie star. Hey Giselle, would you have dinner with me?
All right, made a decision. All right. Yeah, I love the Fluffy part. You know, he wanted to get close to her. And Fluffy, it's like, oh, lovely, I like fluffy dogs. Okay.
My nephew owns the best dog grooming shop in Beverly Hills, so.
Okay.
I want his wife to see it.
Okay, so the voodoo is working. Okay. Who else wrote one that ended? Somebody over here. Yes.
Kind of ended. Pete is the dog groomer and Charlie is the recent immigrant. Pete gets a gut feeling that the next person to enter his business would have a large dog. He was so tired and didn't want a job so hard. He had been very busy for several hours. Pete had been childless in his marriage and owned a very special dog he called Harley. His dog was like a son to him. The doorbell jingled as a very tired, bedraggled person by the name of Charlie enters the business. He has a tiny dog with him. Pete was relieved. Charlie had been on an arduous journey from Chile and had just entered the U.S. a few days ago. Pete looked at these two bedraggled customers and asked, "Can I help you?"
Nice, okay. Yes, ma'am.
Might as well stay with the dog groomers.
Okay, we're doing dog groomers. All right.
This is
I
dog
did-
groomer, recent divorcee.
Okay.
He needs what? Bernard almost choked on his own words. Are you sure he doesn't need a bath? He inhaled something furry that floated in front of his face. I'm sure he needs that, growled Doug the groomer. But the ears are going to be extra. He's never had them trimmed before. The smell of other people's dogs and doggy fresheners choked the back of his throat. When was he last in? Doug eyed him suspiciously. Bernard squirmed under his scrutiny. Have I ever taken him in? I'm not sure. He cast his eyes upward as he tried to remember a time before his wife had left him. Huh, I guess not. The dog, sitting patiently at Bernard's feet, thumped his tail on the floor. Happy for the change of humans, this one came with treats.
All right. Okay, any more dogs? Any more dogs? Okay, give us the dog.
This is a dog groomer and parent of 10 children. Laura smiled as she approached the counter at PetSmart. She recognized Charlie's happy bark amongst the cacophony of dips, yaps, and howls. Maya rushed from the bathroom to meet her at the counter. Laura braced herself. Maya was a talker. Is Charlie ready to go, she asked. Yes, and I am amazed to say it. We have been overwhelmed today. You cannot imagine how busy it has been today. Laura sighed. After raising 10 children herself, she had some notion of busy. Actually, Maya cut her off. I myself have washed and groomed 3 Chihuahua mixes, a Cocker Spaniel, and a Poodle. And poodles take some time, I can tell you. I really need a coffee break. I could use a coffee break myself, Laura said, surprising herself.
Okay, oh, lovely. Lovely. Well, I just want to enjoy that for a minute. The surprising herself part is really like an impulse that was followed before they even realized they were going to do it. Very, very nice. Okay, more stuff. Yes.
I have middle of a messy divorce and a first grade teacher.
Okay.
Mrs. Smith is the teacher and Mrs. Cantor is the woman in a messy divorce. Mrs. Smith felt her stomach twist. The classroom was hot. She felt sweat drip down her spine. The lady in front of her was not engaged. She was not listening about her son's problems. Mrs. Smith focused her eyes on Mrs. Cantor. She tried hard to imagine a caring mother instead of the disinterested, seemingly angry woman she was attempting to communicate with. How could she reach Mrs. Cantor? Mrs. Cantor stared vacantly at the teacher in front of her. What was this woman talking about? Didn't she know her creep of a husband, soon to be ex, was trying to cheat her out of everything she worked for in life? She hated that man. She felt nauseated. She hated this interfering woman. She would just shut her out. Mrs. Cantor, Johnny is crying in class. He is starting fights. I need you to focus on him. Mrs. Cantor looked at the teacher. Her eyes cleared. Oh yes, she'd forgotten about Johnny.
Who's my next volunteer? Yes.
This is really corny.
You say it's corny?
But it's also, just before I read the drivel that I actually wrote, the two that I had were the lost tourist and the psychology grad student. And so I turned it into a archaeological park, a ruin of a
Oh, nice.
spectacular palace or something.
Wow.
And it's just past closing time. And what's interesting about, there were two things that prop up right away. You got the lost tourist and the psychology student. Now, the lost tourist could be the lady, and the psychology student could be the man. Or the tourist could be the man, and the psychology student could be the lady. Unfortunately, I chose the more conservative. You'll have to bear with my cliches. Sheila's legs ached from all the steps and broken masonry she'd scrabbled over all day. After the afternoon breeze dried the sweat that would embarrass her so much if anyone else were around. But she couldn't grumble. The Palace of Nosh was something she'd wanted to see for most of her life, ever since she read about it in middle school. Mrs. Henderson's history class. Mrs. Henderson was Sheila's favorite teacher. Mrs. Henderson would bring pictures of the pyramids or the Taj Mahal. It was her unofficial history for 8th graders. Sheila knew Mrs. Henderson only wanted to go there. She could just tell. Sheila stumbled over a loose stone. Andy heard the stone tumble. He looked at his watch. It was just past closing time. One last schlub from Des Moines looking for one last thrill. The guard would hustle them out soon enough. Then he would have the place to himself. He turned back to his sketch. Sheila stooped to inspect the partial inscription on the stone. She heard movement just around the corner.
I don't know what's going to happen, which is good. That's good. Anybody else? Who's, yes, ma'am.
I write fragmented, so if it doesn't come across too smooth, I apologize.
Okay, just be really, really loud. Okay, be really loud.
Okay, freelance photographer and the immigrant. Freelance photographer Humberto Garcia, age 24, was sent on a photo and lifestyle of the recent immigrants to arrive at Brownsville, Texas. As he began to walk to the border, his skin began to crawl with the questions and anxiety of what he would be experiencing. As his head and neck began to sweat from the heat rising of the day, he really didn't know what he would discover until he noticed a woman and a small child sitting alone along the path. Although he was Hispanic, his Spanish was limited as he asked the woman her name. Maria, she said, with a soft voice. Humberto could vision the woman sitting here for hours, and who knows when was the last time they ate. His first impulse was to sit down next to Maria and to share his packed lunch with her and her small son, Pedro. Pedro was about 1 year old, with a look of hunger in his eyes, as his mouth was half open to receive a small piece of bread to his lips. Humberto realized that this was the perfect time to take photos of a very tired mother, resting with her small child searching for a new life. But first she was savoring the sandwich Humberto had prepared that morning before he left.
Okay, all right. Yes.
Okay, I got parent of 10 children and poet. Okay. Mandy was planning to drink a lot at the wedding reception. Her unsociable husband, Richard, had stayed home with 6 of their 10 children. She waited impatiently for the bartender to pour her drink, the signature cocktail of the event, a hibiscus mango margarita. Her jaw tightened and released when she thought of her 4 offspring running around the hall and grabbing chicken wings off the buffet table. Suddenly, a man's voice in her ear distracted her completely. Words that she barely heard above the loud conversation around her. Something like custody and awful. Huh? She said, turning to face the voice. I said, I'm Austin Custodia. Whom do I have the pleasure of standing behind? Mandy Morgan. He wasn't quite handsome, but had just the kind of sex appeal she swooned over. The bartender handed her the cocktail. She batted her eyes at Austin and sipped it. What are you getting, Austin? She asked him. Before he could respond, her oldest, Miles, appeared at her elbow. He thrust his face in hers and said, Ma, can I have a drink too? She saw Austin's eyes widen in surprise. Her heart sank in her chest like a lead weight.
Disappointing.
I sort of followed the exercise, but sort of not.
Well, that's just how writers are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have 2 characters, and I was actually working on a scene for my book, so I put it into something else.
Just be loud.
Okay. As I shuck out of my shoulder straps, I catch the gaze of the strange guy and hope I don't have sweat stains under my armpits. He smiles nervously at me, revealing several dark gaps where teeth should be. I flinch at the shock of his ravaged mouth, and I quickly pretend I didn't. I look away and waver for a moment on the edge of sitting where I was going to sit next to the guy, or moving away. Hoping it's not obvious, I shift and settle on the ground between Chris and Anna. Hi, I say from my position of safety. I'm Nikki, the Canadian from California. Marcus, he replies and ducks his head. I recall he was talking with the others when Tommy and I joined the group. Are you German? Swiss? No, I am from, he says something that might be Romania, but I'm not sure. Are you a gypsy? I cringe even as the words leave my mouth. Why on earth would I ask him that? He looks into the distance as he answers. I am pilgrim. We are all pilgrims here, and yet something is off.
Well, think about it. Yes. Did you have your hand up? Does anybody have their hand up?
This was hard.
It was hard.
Okay. I had the immigrant, the recent immigrant, and I had the messy divorce.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was hard. Rosa's voice caressed her employer's crippled spirit, causing Lisa for a moment to swallow her hopelessness. I can help you, Rosa said. Lisa stifled the nausea and accepted Rosa's deep brown, reassuring eyes. Come with me, Rosa said. He will never find you or your children. You will have new papers, a new life. Lisa trembled, smiled, and gave Rosa her hand.
Very nice.
Okay. Well, it is hard, isn't it? Yes.
Lois, I only hear about one word in 50, but I tried to write it, and I found that I was writing trite stuff, like you would see in an old Western.
And did you not like that?
Pardon?
Did you not like that? Was that a problem for you?
Was that a problem for you?
For writing about the trite stuff, yes. I wish I had more ingenuity.
Okay, well, we all write crap sometimes.
I can't have self-criticism.
Okay, well, no.
I mean, true, just true. Yes,
I have a story, can I read?
yes, you may.
Oh, no,
Absolutely.
okay. So I had the organic farmer and the adopted child looking for his parents. Well, this fell right into my life. I have a sister who was an organic farmer, and I adopted my first child.
Hey,
So, lots of characters to work with. And they're going to meet down in Texas, where she's starting up her organic farm. All right. Squinting her eyes at the morning sun. The sweat was already trickling down her back. Penny walked down the path with her brown boots, walked down, turning the dirt down the path. Okay, a little bit here. Organic farming had always been her dream, and now that Megan was in school full time, she had a chance. Mike will be here soon. Even though he's my nephew, he's always been like a son to me. Now, just out of high school, he'll come down and help me start my dream. Every summer, the cousins had descended on down to the hill country to ride horses, find fossils, watch the sunsets, eat home cooking. And this morning at breakfast, he said to her, "I have a secret to tell you." She watched Mike come down the hill, and she watched Mike stride down the hill. And with a distant look, he came toward her. His hands were clenched. His eyes looked past her.
Something's happening. Something's going on there. I mean, you know that. Okay, I'm about to lose my voice. I wanted to have I wanted a chance to talk about my books. Okay.
Sure.
So I'm going to do that, and then if you think of questions, I'll try to talk quickly, and then if you have questions for me as a writer, as a workshop leader, as a human being, you know, whatever. My most recent novel is a historical novel, Deborah's Gift. Okay, and it takes place it starts in the 1880s. She's a child. Deborah is a child in the 1880s. Okay, and she is a painter. I'm going to have water. What do you think? Water?
Yeah, very good.
She has a passion for painting, a passion for art, and that's what really carries her through all of the things that happen to her in this novel. That's the through line, and a lot of things happen. Okay, so she's American. It's set in St. Louis. It's set in Martinique, right, in the Caribbean. It's back in St. Louis, back to Martinique, and then it's in New York City. So the action takes place in a lot of different places. And it's about her ability to survive the things that happen to her because of her art. She's the one that had to go look at the terrible scene and paint it so that she could understand it. Whereas I, the writer, wanted to just crawl off somewhere and not think about it anymore, you know. So what else can I say about it? It's the language in which it is written is English, obviously, but in the intro you heard that I read Victorian novels as a child, and it had a lasting effect on me, and I always wanted to write a Victorian novel, but born too late, okay? But this is the closest that I can get to a Victorian novel, okay? So the language is elevated, I would say, and rather grand. So that book is for sale on their sale table. And then my other book that I wanted to talk about is Tina Goes to Heaven. Okay, that's a novel I wrote before Deborah. And it's not a Victorian novel at all. Okay. It's about a sex worker in Sacramento who wants out of the business because her pimp/boyfriend is really mad at her. So she's looking for a way to escape. And she ends up in a little fishing resort between Grass Valley and Reno somewhere, or Truckee or something. Anyway, up there in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And she has no money, nothing. She has maybe a shirt, an extra shirt, and that's all she's got. And so it talks about how she uses the skills, not the sex skills, but her interpersonal skills to survive. It's funny. It's a comic novel, essentially, with some serious issues in it, okay? So that, I would invite you to enjoy that one. And then my first book was a collection of short stories, short fiction, which is varied. It's miscellaneous. I don't have one place. You know how some really good writers, Carson McCullers or the person's name I can never remember, or have that place, Faulkner in the South. Quite often it's the South, isn't it? Yeah. I don't have that. I didn't have that as a child. It's like, well, you know, Oklahoma, really? I was in the bad part of Oklahoma. Okay. I was in the panhandle of Oklahoma in Texas County. So that, and then Albuquerque is nice, but then California, and I just lived all over the place, Washington. So I don't have that place. So my stories are very, very different from each other. Okay. And they were written over probably a 30-year span, I would think, maybe even more. And I had the opportunity to go back to the earliest ones and use what I know now to make them better, to revise. They're all revised a lot. So those are the 3 books. And they are available at the, back there. There are also handouts, really pretty rough handouts. You just forgive me, they're pretty rough. Handouts, just notes from this workshop. If you ever wanted to duplicate it or try it again, or just have it, then there's handouts on the back table. There are no handouts on the back table. They have been distributed to you. I'm intuiting this from the gestures of my friend Anara. Oh, they have been. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, question.
Yeah, so in Deborah's Gift and Tina Goes to Heaven, at what draft did you start trying to make sure that you infused all these emotions, sensations, feelings?
I don't know. Obviously, I'm dumbstruck. It didn't work that way quite. I can almost tell you with Tina, because that was written first as a novella, just as a sort of a fun thing, and then I ended up going back into it and infusing the scenes, building the scenes. I didn't add any action, I didn't add any events, but I made it into a novel by reliving in the body the scenes, yeah. In Deborah, I think that one didn't work that way. because every sentence, it tried to do that. Yeah, every sentence tried, I was aware of that all the way through, of wanting to give the reader her experience.
So in the early drafts,
It was in early drafts, and there were many, many, many drafts. I have no idea how many drafts there were, because I tend to write in chapters when I'm writing long fiction, because then I have a self-contained thing, right? And I go, this is going to be the chapter where these three things have to happen, okay? And so sometimes I had to go back and rearrange the chapters, or I had to make sure that, for example, I had to make sure that not every character was named Mary. I didn't catch that, you know, but it's like I had Maria, I had Marie, I had two Marys, I had actually two Maries, and so I had to go back and, you know, do that. That's a little revision, you know. Of course, you just search for Mary and change it to something else, but still it was, it's the kind of thing that can happen to me anyway. Lots of, I mean, I don't know how long it took me to write it, but probably 3 years, I would suppose. And I had thought of it before that. Long before that, yeah. And that story, that novel, arose out of a short story, and this is how writers write for writers and writers read for writing and stuff. A short story by Kate Chopin. You may know her. She was a writer of the late Victorian, American writer. And my character was not in her story, but some of the other characters in my story are from her story. And I also got to use historical figures that just kind of popped up. You know, that when you do research, you find things that you go, oh, okay, all right, yeah. So then everything has changed. It's like all of a sudden the family is French. Well, how did that happen? Well, because they have to be French to have an estate in Martinique. So they're French American. Okay. Well, so then I go back and I change their names, you know, and have some fun with the Frenchness of them and that kind of thing. So it tends to be quite messy. And I just stir it until I can tell it's done. Yeah. Yes.
Lois Ann, these 4 posters up on the wall.
Yeah.
Are they giant Post-its, and where did you get them?
They are giant Post-its. Good question. They are giant Post-its, and I got them at Office Max. They are not cheap. The Post-it goo on them is very strong. In fact, you end up wrestling with a Mobius strip if you're not careful, you know. But yeah, I got them last night and wrote stuff on them in my handwriting, such as it is. But yeah, I thought they were pretty cool. Yeah, expensive, but cool. Yes?
I was wondering if you read Moll Flanders.
Moll Flanders, I have read Moll Flanders.
Did that influence Tina Goes to Heaven at all, or?
It did not.
Okay.
It did not, but it could have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Tina's not a Moll Flanders. No, I'm trying to pull Moll Flanders up in my memory, but she just does not really want to be a sex worker. And I think Moll Flanders is like, sure, whatever, you know, all the time. Yeah. Good question, yeah. Yes.
have you ever heard of the emotion thesaurus? It's one of the different writers' guides and references.
No. No, I think, I don't know if this got passed out yet or not, but I have a wheel. What does it look like? Here we go. Did you get something that looks like this?
No.
If you want something like this, and it's kind of what you're talking about too, then you need to sign up with your email. And I can email and let me know in a little note that you want this wheel. What this is English teacher Caitlin Robbs created a vocabulary wheel to help you narrow down the word that best describes your feelings or your character's feelings. So we have sad, disgust, anger, fear, surprise, and happy in the middle, okay? And then sad, I'm just giving you some examples, is divided out into guilty, abandoned, despair, depressed, lonely, and bored. What is the character? Which of those? And they each have a different flavor. And then those, there's even more. Where am I? Sad? Oh, remorseful, ashamed, ignored, victimized, powerless, vulnerable, inferior. I should have chosen a different feeling. They're not all this bad. Inferior, empty, abandoned, isolated, apathetic, and indifferent. Okay. So if you would like to have a look at this, it's on the internet. You might be able to find it just by looking for emotion wheel or something, you know. And I didn't bring it out first because it's a thesaurus thing, and I wanted to situate us more in the body than in the vocabulary. Yes?
Just as a side note, I was one of the beta readers and proofers for the emotional thesaurus 2.
Oh.
There's a second volume out now. And it's just more. The Writers Helping Writers website, amazing. I suggest everybody go visit it and explore, and there's a ton of free stuff there that is gold mines.
Gold mine, okay. Okay, well, I think we're,
Yes.
okay, have you been doing that for the last 15 minutes? No. Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me.